All right, so I wanted to add this lesson into this section, and this is going to be a lot different than our normal Midjourney content. This is actually going to be a deep dive into the creation process using Midjourney. I'm going to try to not do any edits, and this is going to be a much longer form piece of content where I'm going to try to replicate these photos that I pulled from online. I have no idea what the prompts were. I have no idea the parameters. And I want to try to recreate these to the best of my ability. Now, it's almost impossible to exactly replicate anything in with AI generative art in general. But I want to use what we've learned in this course so far to try to replicate this as close as possible with the overall personality, the tone, the coloring, and the overall feeling. I'm not going to get a picture perfect replica, but we'll try our best. Some of these I might get close to on the first few, and some of these other ones may be very hard to replicate in general. So if you want to continue on to the following lessons and you don't want to do this deep dive, you can skip forward. But if you want to stick around and learn alongside me as I'm learning this process as well of how close I can actually get to replicating these, then stick around and let's dive into this lesson. So like I mentioned, here are our main photo references that we want to try to replicate. So let's go ahead and start with something a little bit more simple. So just in looking at this, I can see that this is a macro shot, meaning it's a close-up shot with a shallow depth of field, meaning the background is blurred. Of course, our subject is a mushroom. The coloring is pretty vibrant. The lighting is pretty soft, I would say. And the overall, and I guess also there's these water droplets. So let's just get right into it. It's going to take a while for Midjourney to pop back the examples. So I'll probably do a few of these at the same time. But for this first one, here's the settings that I want to start with. So we'll do test P, which is going to make it look more photorealistic, because overall, this is a pretty photorealistic image compared to something like this that's a little bit more clearly animated or just overall cartoon looking. So these are the settings we're going to do for here. So let's go ahead and start this process off. So let's say a macro shot of a, let's say, warm, glowing mushroom, because it's got a little bit of a warmth and a glow to it. And we want to get with dew droplets or water droplets. So let's say water droplets. And then we'll say, looking back at this, is a shallow depth of field. Shallow depth of field, so it has a blurred background. What else can we say about this image? I would say this would go in the vibrant category. So we say vibrant, or it's not, oh man, this is difficult. See, if we say vibrant, we can get something a little bit too oversaturated. So let's just say warm, saturated, and what is a final thing that we could say? Let's say soft lighting. Soft lighting. And let's go ahead and let Midjourney do its thing. While that's going in the background, let's move to another option. Why don't we go here? We have two different versions of a dragon. We have this where it's clearly a book illustration. So it's a cartoon drawing type of rendering inside of a book. And then we have this other dragon that's a lot more minimal, clean, black and white. And it looks almost like porcelain skin. And it looks to me like more like a statue. So I think these will be interesting to do a comparison, or to try to do at the same time rather. So let's go ahead and start with this version. And it looks like, yeah, it's still rendering in the background. So let's go ahead /imagine. And let's do a white porcelain, because that looks like the type of material that this is, or like a papery or porcelain, but let's go with porcelain. Dragon with red eyes. And it looks like a statue or a miniature. So let's actually miniature or let's see. Yeah, miniature. I'm not sure how to spell miniature. Okay, miniature. Miniature, let's see. Is that how you spell it? I guess that's how you spell it. Miniature statue of white porcelain dragon with red eyes. Let's say minimal coloring, because it's not necessarily black and white. If it was black and white, then there would be no red eyes, but it's very muted tones. I think that's actually a more appropriate, muted tones. That's going to be a more appropriate description. That, and let's also say black background, because clearly this is a very like minimal image with a black background. We don't see any ornateness in the background. So miniature statue of a white porcelain dragon with red eyes, muted tones, black background. Let's go ahead and put that in. Let's see the output and see how we can refine it to be closer. And here is our first initial image of the mushroom. So clearly we have a similar framing. Let me go ahead and pull this up. A similar framing. I like this one because of just the amount of detail that it has. We do get the glow. You can see the underglow here. This mushroom is not the coolest looking mushroom, I would say, but we do have our water droplets. We do have our blurred background. Let's go ahead and try to refine this a little bit. We can regenerate another one just to see, because maybe we weren't too far off on our initial run at it, but let's go ahead and type in our same prompt, but let's put in sharp focus, because there's a certain softness to this, and then there's a certain just overall sharpness to this. And let's also add close-up. Well, technically it is a macro shot, so it is a close-up. And let's put in photorealistic, because that is gonna give us photorealistic, just a little bit more of that hyper detail look and feel. So let's do that. And let's go ahead and move to our next item. So we got this rendering in the background. Now, while that's going, let's try to get this version. So let's go to settings. And let's go ahead and take off test P, and let's move it to just the normal test. So now Midjourney is not going to try to create a hyper realistic look. It's gonna look a little bit more cartoony and artistic. So let's start this off /imagine. And we want to do how would you define this? It's definitely in a book. So a cartoon, it's not necessarily, let's hand painted. It's painted, but it's like hand drawn. Okay, I think that's what we need. Hand drawn illustration of, let's say, female hero riding a dragon. Okay, and they're both wearing kind of ornate armor. So wearing ornate armor. And it's inside of a book. So hand-drawn illustration, book illustration of a female riding a dragon. Let's just make sure our dragon has wings, wearing ornate armor. And let's see, we can type in ancient, because that's going to give us a little bit how this kind of looks like, it's not on papyrus, but it's on like aged paper. So typing in something of a time period, instead of modern and new, we can type in something like ancient or fantasy, or, which actually that would probably help out a little bit. But typing in the time period is gonna help with that. So ancient, fantasy, let's start with that and let's see what we get. So I'm gonna hit enter. And here's our, let's see what we have. Here's our updated look. I'm liking it. This is pretty close. Again, this is such a cool mushroom. So let's try. I'm wondering how, let's see, these mushrooms. It's doing a great job of replicating the framing, the closeness of the camera to our subject, and the warmth and the details that we want. It's just tough to get that specific style of the mushroom. So let's try one more, but I'm relatively happy with that. So macro shot of a warm glowing mushroom. How would you explain this? It's like a long stem. Let's try growing mushroom, because that might influence a little bit on the artistic side of having a longer, I think it's called a stem. I don't really know what this part of the mushroom is actually called. I assume this is called the head or the top of the mushroom. I'm not quite sure. But let's go ahead and try that. Again, it's a little bit of a roulette wheel, because you don't know quite exactly what it's going to pop out, because the seed generation generates things at random. So what I want to do is go ahead and grab this. We actually have to change back to test P. So let's go ahead and do that. And /imagine. Here we go. Boom. And glowing and growing mushroom with water droplets and a long detailed stem. I think it's called a stem. So let's try stem. Let's hit enter on that. And here's our hand-drawn, our V1 of the hand-drawn book illustration, which I knew was going to be a little bit difficult to physically get the person on the dragon. I have noticed in the past that it can be a little bit hard to get a person on an animal, or anything where you're kind of layering two separate subjects on top of each other. So I knew this one would be a bit of a challenge, but let's go ahead and regenerate that and see if our second kind of shot in the dark is any closer. So that's regenerating. Let me look at the prompt again to see kind of what else we could do. So a hand-drawn book illustration of a female hero riding a dragon with wings, wearing ornate armor, ancient fantasy test. So let's go ahead and copy this. Okay, and let's go back to our settings. We want to actually go back to test, which I can actually just do it right here. So boom. And let's go /imagine. And let's put this in, hand-drawn book illustration of a female hero riding a dragon with wings, fantasy, close up, inside of a book. That might be too many references to the book, but let's see what we get. Because like I mentioned before in previous lessons, you're never going to get the exact thing that you have in your mind's eye of what you want to create. Midjourney is not good at doing that specifically. It's generally going to give you something that looks really cool, but wasn't really your initial intention. So that's pretty cool so far with that. So that we're working on in the background. This we've been working on. Now let's take a look. Where did this show up? So let's go back and see our white porcelain dragon. Okay, cool. I put it with a teacup. That's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and see the difference. So let's try to get some more ornate wings. But this is pretty cool. So what could we do here? It's clearly porcelain. Now that I'm seeing what the porcelain looks like, it seems to be maybe paper, but you know what? Let's go here. Miniature statue. Let's copy this. Let's start anew. Prompt. And miniature statue. Miniature full body statue of a fierce, because these kind of have a more playful toy aspect to it, and this just has a more cool, fierce, fighty, dangerous feeling to it. So of a fierce white porcelain dragon with red eyes. I'm not mad at the framing and the lighting. If we just take away the elements of not necessarily nailing exactly how the dragon looks, but the overall framing, feeling, and capturing, oh, okay, yeah, this looks like a white porcelain dragon, we're not too far away. But I would even say that we would want to maybe mute this even more. So muted tones, desaturated. That's going to give us more of this older look with less saturation. So we have that, and then we have our hand-drawn illustration of the female riding the dragon. And yeah, that's a really, honestly, I didn't know what I was going to be able to necessarily recreate easily and not easily. This is definitely a direction of capturing like the framing, but not necessarily the same look and feel, right? So let's see what we can do here. Let's go ahead and regenerate that. We could even create a V2 or more options of this one. So let's go ahead and do that as well. I'm gonna hit submit. And where else? What else do we have here? Been working on the mushroom. Let's see. While those are going, let's take a stab at this one. See, these are a little bit difficult, to be totally honest, but this is interesting. So it's clearly close-up of a woman's face with nature and what do you call foliage and plants growing out of the face. So that can be a little bit of a difficult thing to convey, but let's take a swing at it. So close up of woman's face, nature. So let's say lush nature growing out of skin. What else do we have here? Roots. So yeah, let's say roots and lush nature growing out of skin. Definitely, this is definitely giving me fantasy. And eyes open. Let's try that, see what we get, and then we'll refine. Okay, now we're getting a lot closer to this one, especially on the right, to this look. So we have the porcelain look and feel. Our background is very similar, and it's clearly a dragon. There are some anatomical stuff, so we could like definitely regenerate, which why not? We're here. So let's go ahead and create a second version of both. Boom, boom. And let's see. So we're making our way through. Yeah, this was kind of the V2. It's clearly, and that's the thing. So here we're nailing the framing and just overall composition pretty well, but it's a totally different style of time period. So let's move away from that. And this is actually captures the feeling a lot more. again, like stacking the stuff with having a person riding a dragon is a tough prompt to attain. But let's look at our prompt. Hand-drawn book illustration of a female hero riding a dragon with wings. Why don't we try minimizing this a little bit more? Because that might be a problem as well. Sometimes if you have too many things, like, okay, put this person on top of a horse and then they're also wearing this and that, it can be a little bit difficult. So let's try taking out the armor. Ancient fantasy, hand-drawn illustration of a female hero. And let's just type in, yeah, just to minimize this, because either we need to go into the more simple or reword things and change our ordering around. So here we're pretty close to this example, but let's now check out this one. So that's okay. This is a much cooler looking image overall. So we've got to change something. We were not close on our initial prompt. So we tried a close up of a woman, roots and lush, a nature growing out. So let's try something different. So beautiful woman face, entire forest growing out of skin. And let's just try that. I won't add any more intricacies to that prompt because I just want to see if we're even going in the correct direction. So while those are generating, let's go ahead and see what we're working with. Let's take a swing at this last option. So this is an owl looking directly into camera. You can see the full body of the owl. And there's this cool paper mache, it's made of paper, so it's paper scraps. So, and there's like a movement feeling to it. I like the swirl feeling. So let's go ahead and start this off. So full body of owl looking into camera, made out of paper mache, which I don't know how to spell mache. Oh my gosh, this is a problem. Paper mache? Oh my goodness, made out of paper. And then, let's see here. Scraps of paper. Swirling, should be more accurate, around owl. Okay. And the lighting is, there's a light source coming from over here. So I would say, and it's a pretty cinematic looking lighting. So let's go with cinematic lighting because there's like a nice amount of contrast in this image. There's a nice amount of depth in the shadows and a more professional look of lighting. Like this is very flat lighting, right? There's not a lot of shadows and contrast. This has got a decent amount. So cinematic is going to kind of encapsulate all of that. So let's let that roll. And here's our updated image. Okay, it's getting a little bit better. It's a little bit hard to get the fact across, or really just the prompt across of having nature growing out of the subject. But let's go ahead and look here. So these are some cool ones. We're closer to the fantasy feel, the hand-drawn look, and the overall just feeling. It would be nice if this was printed on the top of a book. And if we can get our female riding the dragon. But because this is in the right direction, let's go ahead and regenerate this, which is going to give us a similar look for these two styles. And then maybe we'll get lucky and we'll get our female on top of the dragon. Now, let's work on this one again. So let's go here. Let's go back to our settings as well, and let's get back to test P so that we can get more realistic looking outputs. And let's see what we can do. So beautiful woman face. So you know what? Let's try this. Let's try this. Beautiful, made out of, because clearly it didn't get that we wanted to combine the woman and the forest. So rather than entire forest growing out of the skin, it's having a hard time picking up that concept. It's a little conceptual. So let's say beautiful woman face made out of an entire forest growing out of skin. So let's just take this out and let's test and see if this gets us closer. Okay. Now, here is our first swing at the owl. Let's go ahead and look at our reference. So we need our owl to be more anatomically accurate. Okay. These are a little bit too artistic. So full body of owl looking into camera, made out of paper. So let's grab this. And what I've noticed, if you're really wanting to get anatomically accurate, oh, and this was using test. So that's why it's also a little bit more artistic. So we definitely want to be using test P. So we should be back on test P because we just changed it in our settings. That's going to help a lot. So let's go ahead. Full body of an owl looking into camera. And here's what I was saying. I've noticed if you say award-winning photography of, and using the term award-winning photography, Midjourney is going to look at all of the photos that align with that keyword, and it's going to look a lot more realistic because award-winning photography, it's generally really good photos from really good photographers. So adding that in can be a bit of a hack sometimes. So award-winning photography of a full body owl looking into camera, made out of paper, scraps of paper swirling in background. And let's try this again. I feel like we should be able to get close to this. So this one, it's a little bit, okay, it's okay. I'm not in love with that. I think we were our closest here, and it would certainly take some more refinement. So let's continue to try and refine these a little bit more. This is our current output for our owl. It's a different style. It's not the exact same, but we do have an owl clearly made out of paper. I'm gonna go ahead and make a different version of this one. Let's try one more on top of this because I do like the direction that this is going in. Imagine. And let's try, instead of paper scraps swirling, flying. We'll try flying in background, okay? And then lastly, this one has been a little bit elusive of getting the same style. So you know what I'm noticing? It's really putting the forest secondary. So what I want to do is rearrange the order of this prompt. So let's say lush forest growing out of beautiful woman face. And before I put more details in that, let's just see if that gets us more in the right direction of just changing the context a little bit by rearranging the order of the prompt. Okay, and my memory card actually filled up during the filming of this whole process. So we are skipping forward just a little bit. But what I wanted to do is just recap what we created together. So let's organize this real quick. So let's go ahead and see, where's our porcelain? Okay, here was our input image that we wanted to replicate, recreate, without knowing any of the prompts or anything ahead of time. And this is our output image in Midjourney. super happy with that. I think that's pretty dang close. So let's go ahead and minimize that. And of course, some of these we got closer than others. For example, where was the hard one to replicate? This one was a little bit difficult to get to. So let's put this on this side. Whoops. Let's put this over here. We have our owl, paper mache owl, which I don't know how to spell mache. Clearly, you've learned that about me. But and here's our paper mache owl. It's not that we weren't close on the paper mache part. Like the lighting is really great. Even the eyes are really similar. Just the overall styling of it is really close. Getting the swirl of paper and that creative element was a little bit more difficult. So not the best, not the worst. There are elements that we got that were really good about this, and overall I'm pretty happy with that. Now moving on, let's see what else. Yeah, so we have, this was one of our outputs, and where was our main with this one? So the Mother Nature with the roots, the forest growing out of the face, that's a pretty good output. I'm pretty happy with that. That took some fine tuning and some work to get to, of just really repositioning and changing the words so that we can get the roots growing out of our subject. But overall, got the same fantasy feel. The lighting, the coloring, everything is very similar. So moving on, this one, oh yeah, this was a little bit tough. So I downloaded 2 of our outputs. Let me bring up the main. We have our book illustration, which from here, I'm happy with like the overall framing. Everything about it is similar. It's just the color palette that we could have spent more time fine tuning, but we have our female riding a dragon with wings inside of a book illustration. And I liked the coloring and the pastel medium that it looks like this is from. If this was only, you know, put into this style of book, it would be really close. And of course, the female riding the dragon. But I just wanted to save both of those so you could see the similarities. And then what was our last? Oh, okay, yeah, our mushroom. So this is what we started with, our very first one. I'm pretty happy with that. Clearly, we had a hard time getting down to the exact longer mushroom stem. You know, we reworked that a few times, but we have our image with the same feeling, similar color palette, the same lens that it would have been photographed with, and the blurry background and all of those elements. So I hope that you enjoyed this deep dive, working with me, alongside me with this creation process in Midjourney. Some of these we got really close to creating the final output, creating our own prompts. The other ones were a little bit more difficult, but at the end of the day, I hope that you learned something and really got a little bit more insights on the reiteration process of trying a certain prompt. Sometimes you get exactly what you're looking for right away. Other times you have to reiterate and continue to refine it until you're getting your ideal image output. So I hope you enjoyed this deep dive, and I will see you in the next lesson.